Welcome to the Action Item Podcast. Meet your hosts, Trevor Hunter and Leo Lopez. They dive into their personal experiences and client stories, discussing hurdles, struggles, and successes. And at the end of each show, you'll get a simple action item that you can put in play today to make a real impact on your business.
So, welcome to the Action Item Podcast. I'm Trevor, and I have Leo here.
Hello, everybody.
This is our second episode. To start with, I wanted to thank everybody who watched the last one. It was far better, far more successful than even we expected. So I appreciate everybody. Obviously, with the number of views, somebody shared it, and that's awesome. So last week, we talked about what causes businesses to fail. And one of those things last week we talked about was the business owner themselves. So I'll link that.
Imagine that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'll link that somewhere if you want to check that out. Leo has a couple other ways that businesses struggle.
Sure, definitely. I mean, the struggle is real. So, as we had talked about in last week's episode, it's a swim upstream for any entrepreneur. The odds seemingly are stacked against you in a lot of different ways. But in the many ways, when the odds are in your favor. So, but if you do any scouring of books and online, ChatGPT, whatever you're looking at, research, Google, usually you can boil things down to three major areas where, or three major factors that contribute to the failure of a business. And so the first one is the lack of a market need or a lack of positioning the business. And what does that mean? Well, that means that maybe the business that has started or is being started doesn't have sufficient demand. Maybe there's not really a market out there. And so maybe the entrepreneur kind of misjudges the market or it could be that doesn't really solve a problem. So, and there's a myriad of examples we can go into around that. And I'll tell you guys, I mean, we talk about this as related to new businesses, but, you can definitely apply some of these principles and understand some of these reasons to your current business. I mean, because, Blockbuster, anybody, it's like things can shift, but that's a whole other topic. The second one is insufficient capital. Obviously money, unless you are fortunate enough to have a lot of stacks of money, that's definitely very problematic, definitely a barrier of entry. And I think the third and final one I extracted is kind of poor management and planning. But, for the purposes of today's episodes, we're going to focus on this lack of market need or lack of market positioning. So, and again, what does that mean? Maybe you've gone into a market that is heavily saturated, or maybe you're not positioning your business according to the community or to the potential customer demand that you have. So, and I think this is a good time. You and I were having a conversation about this offline, Trevor, where you're not exactly in 100% agreement that, around some of the market demand stuff. I know you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think there's a demand for nearly everything from someone. Now, and obviously there's some outlandish ideas that, hell, a pet rock was a popular thing at one point in time for like 7 minutes. You go to a city and you see 4 Starbucks on each corner, so just because you have a landscaping company or restaurant or whatever, market saturation probably is not, in my opinion, is probably not the problem. It's you haven't accurately figured out what your value prop is, which the value prop is why someone should choose you over the competitor that you have. I see a lot of business owners that point, it's their fault. It's they're bad mouthing me. They're doing fake reviews on me, or they're doing this, or they're doing that. And we hear it all. And sometimes they're legitimate, gripes. And granted, we are talking smaller business here. You've had more experience with the bigger businesses. I've had a ton of experience with the smaller stuff. Well, no, you've done a ton of with startups too. So that's
Well,
that's not
there's a universality, obviously, from a large corporation to a small business. I mean, the same things that can kill your business, small and startup, can also kill your business, even like we said, established, right?
of course.
So yeah, but definitely, I could see where this might be different. Like I still feel that the saturation stuff is a barrier. Like if I want to sell shoes online, like there's like, it's like a dime a dozen, right, of online retailers. I tell people, I really think that people need to either do something different or better than the competition
Yes.
if you want to survive in saturation. But if you don't, then you're setting yourself for failure. And a lot of people, I think you used the example, I think in our last episode, that you had a friend that wanted to start a hat business.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that would be good, to talk about how you felt that was not positioned well or not aligned with his market. So
That's
I
a
think
great
that's
example.
a perfect case study of why not start this hat business, right?
Yep. Okay. So I know what his intention is. I'll go buy, $10,000-$12,000 worth of inventory. I'll call it Trevor, have him build me a badass website, and the business will come. And the reality of that is if he was in a position to, or he actually is, he can afford to, but he probably shouldn't, throw $100,000 at marketing and get himself positioned in the searches and in search and in pay-per-click ads and in everywhere, then yeah, he could succeed very, very quickly. The other way is to build a huge social media following. And then you don't need that, but that takes time. So my business or my thought process for this is more for small businesses. Online businesses have two paths: time or money. And time is, I have time to build social media. I have time to build tons and tons of content, so I rank on Google, or I throw money at the problem. That's it. There's time or money. There's no other thing for online businesses. So building that hat business he didn't have the social media following. He does have the money, but should he spend $100,000 of his money to build a hat business when he's building, he has a good business. He's doing $1 million a year digging with skid steers and excavators and stuff. So, but does he want to take $100,000 and spend it toward, a hat brand? Probably not. So online saturation is a huge variable. Local saturation for an ice cream shop or a restaurant or a landscaper or an electrician or whatever, I don't think that matters. If there's 12 electricians in your town, you got to figure out what your niche is and go after that.
Like we said, if you are going to go into a saturated market, let's use the hats and again, we're just using that as an example, right? I like what you said about him building a following on social media, because I think that if you are in a saturated business environment, you either have to do something better or you have to stand out, basically, like you said, from the other folks, right? And so do it better or do it different. So in this case, as you said, building a social media following, if I really was passionate about hats, and that's really what you want to start online, if you can do it differently, or if you can do it better, or if you can put a purpose behind it, right, and a community behind it. And that's like, I think, something what you were saying about the community. You've got somebody with great reviews that builds a reputation, and that only continues to snowball the more people that are participating and reviewing. And so, in terms of the hat business, if you can build a community through a brand or through a purpose. So I'll give you an example. There's a difference between a business that sells hats online or a business that sells hats online for big gentlemen who have large heads. So, and I'm 6'3", 270 pounds. So I can't just pull everything off of a rack and it's going to fit. Now, that kind of business, I could totally get behind that. It's something different, or like you said, you found your niche, or that you're doing it better than others. Going back to, well, what is our alignment with the market demand? What is the problem that we're solving for the potential customers? But I would even add who those customers are, can make a huge difference.
Yeah. So to that point, knowing who your customer is, people probably get tired of examples, but I have examples for everything. There's a restaurant where most of the demographic is literally probably 50 years of age or older. I don't like his spaghetti very much because it's very bland, but we're in North Carolina and most of his audience is 50 plus.
So is this like a diner or something, or why is
it's just a Italian restaurant, but it's a very bland spaghetti sauce.
Welcome. This is where old people come to dine.
I mean, but he does $100,000 a week. No, he does about 80 a week of serving old people bland spaghetti. Well, you might, if somebody went in, it's like, that was a young, adventurous person would be like, well, let's spice up this spaghetti. I've thought the same thing when I go eat there, but that would kill his market. Now his market's dying anyways.
I know, right? Well, but there's people aging in the US, right? The US is aging. So, hey,
I don't think the next 10, I feel like the 40 to 50s now probably have a different flavor profile.
Yeah.
In the 50 to 60s and the 60s and 70s now, I think.
Yeah. I think sometimes though, and you kind of make an interesting point. He already has a community, sounds like that's already, built and established and follows him to the ends of the earth or until, the grave at this point.
They do. He shouldn't mess that up. But yeah, so our strategy for him was how do you not mess that up, still gain a new audience? So we're in Bible Belt, North Carolina. So, bringing alcohol in probably wasn't the best idea, but we brought in some pizza. We brought in some other things like that does bring in, and then brought in built an outside patio area. And that's done a really good job of keeping the core demographic happy, but then bringing in some outside, interests as well. So he knows his demographic and made decisions to keep the demographic, but also bring in new. And knowing what your customer base is, and most people don't know what their customer base is. Most people don't know what their best product is. I think I told you this. I had one guy that was fussing about, we do a lot of restaurants, so a lot of my analogies will become for restaurants, but he was fussing about the cost of he was fussing about the cost of roast beef. And he was like, I don't even think we sell that many of them. So I pulled up his POS and was like, it's literally your number 2 item, dude.
Right. Right. So, yeah.
Knowing your business. Is this a good pivot to the story?
Yeah, no, well, I think in terms, this is a good place. Look, the key point is, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's knowing your business, knowing its place in the community or audience or wherever that may be, whether it's online e-commerce, whether it's, you're at a flea market or you do flea markets or farmers markets, or whether you're brick and mortar. At the end of the day, and I do see this, like, I got to tell you, before we move forward, I see a lot of examples in this. I had a family member who purchased a very expensive El Pollo Loco franchise, which is a Mexican chicken franchise. I don't know if you guys have them back east. I know they're in LA. I'm not sure.
Have them, but I've had them before.
Which is the crazy chicken. But he bought the space, and it's in Beverly Hills. And it didn't do well. I wonder why, right? But like, Beverly Hills is obviously a more affluent part of Los Angeles. And sad to say, but I think you might have wanted to choose something that's better aligned to a more modest income or something, or maybe the tastes of your customers. Again, I'm not saying a fast food restaurant can't make it in Beverly Hills, but that's probably not the first place, at least I would think, I would want to put that, for sure. And I'll tell you a story too. I grew up in, so I'm from Los Angeles. I'm from the San Gabriel Valley, we are predominantly Asian. We are. I mean, that's the community from all parts, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, you name it. Big melting pot. I have seen restaurants that try to come in like to start burger joints or kind of the other just American fare. And then they're gone. And then usually replaced by a Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, or Asian restaurant of some kind that's wildly successful. And I mean, it's like, look, it's just the reality of this region, of this demographic, of the age group in our community. So again, going back to the community, you know, corn dogs, burgers, and fries and stuff like aren't going to cut it here. They just won't, you know? So yeah, so there's definitely something to be said about that. So, all right. So we've talked a lot about kind of a few examples of why this kills businesses. How do we stop that from happening, basically? And so the first place I would start, and this is again, whether whether you're starting a business, in business or not, the first place to start is you've got to sit down. I mean, make the time. We're all busy, especially if you're in business, you're super busy, but you got to set 1 hour at some point, sit down and do something called a SWOT analysis. Now, have you heard of what a SWOT analysis is?
Yeah, well, I mean, with you, it's not something we use. It's not a term we use.
SWOT analysis stands for, it's 4 words. It is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat. You look at your business and you look at the 4 things. The first one is the strengths. What are the things that your company does well? And be honest with yourself. This is kind of like an opportunity. Don't lie, do this with yourself or do this with your co-founders or even employees. What qualities separate you from your competitors? And again, this is what we're talking about, the differentiation, right? What are the internal resources you have? Are they skilled? Is your chef, up to par? If you're an electrician, or is your office staff taking care of you, right? And then kind of looking at your tangible assets. I mean, do you have a, proprietary system? Like, I mean, I know you like to build AI tools that, aren't really publicly available or are your own custom applications. So those are the things that, like, that's kind of what brings you strengths in a business, right? So, so I think it will even be more applicable if we try to put focused digital marketing, and I know you're kind of raising your eyebrows right now, but why don't we put focused digital marketing through this very quickly, right? So give me one strength that you say, or a quality that separates you from the competitors. So I think focused digital marketing will be our guinea pig for this SWOT analysis.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. What separates you? What makes you different from all of the other people that build websites, do SEO or digital marketing for other companies? I'm putting you on the spot here. So.
Yeah, I was trying to think.
Yeah. Or what does your company do well? Or think about your internal resources, experience kind of stuff. Like what makes you apart? Because those are all your strengths, right? So,
probably, and I don't even know how to articulate this, but I personally have a hand in about everything, which is terrible for scalability. But when a problem arises, I have the ability to edit the video, make the graphic, or fix or write the code, or write the program.
Good.
Whatever it is. So again, not patting me on the back, not trying to, but from a founder-based situation where it doesn't really matter what the problem is, there's a solution that can be had. Yeah. And because we are small, we don't really, the toolbox is endless. If we need a new tool that we don't have, fuck it, we'll make the damn time. We'll make the tool. I mean, you've seen it. So yeah.
I think, I think, from a strength perspective, the fact that you are hands-on, very tactical on the customers that you're working with, there's definitely something to be said about, you're not talking to layers, you're not talking to front desk receptionist people, or you're not talking to support representatives. You are working with the folks who are hands-on to every step of the way of your program. And so that is a high touch level of service. And that is something that can differentiate you from everybody else. And, I'm not going to get into the state of customer experience and customer service. That's a topic we're going to be hitting in the not so far future. But, getting yourself to stand out, the bar is pretty damn low right now. So if you can find someone who gives you a very personalized touch right now, you're already differentiating your business. So the other ones now, that's S. What's W? W is weaknesses. And what are weaknesses? So what does your company lack right now? What are things that your competitors do that they do better than you? What are your resource limitations? Right. So, and I think that, and that can also be whether it's people, financial resources, knowledge resources. I mean, there's quite a few there, but these are the things that your company doesn't have right now. Here's a great example. If you're selling hats online and you offer email support, but lids.com offers voice, email, social, and, chat support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Like, well, yeah, the reality is your hat business has that weakness, right? And again, this is to take a snapshot in time of where your business is right now, but also to help you to make sure that you're not falling into these pitfalls, right? Especially of kind of misalignment or
okay. I see. Yeah, I see where you. Okay.
Yep. So that's weaknesses. Anything that you want to share, or we can skip that?
Well, just a perfect scenario. I'd stay on top of this, and I wasn't aware that I stayed on top of this. Just like we stopped taking marketed clients like 3 months ago because we knew this AI thing was this AI development was going to come in, and we're going to start offering that. So I knew my weakness was people. I didn't have enough staff to do that.
Gotcha.
So I made the decision to stop accepting marketing clients.
Gotcha.
So I was essentially using this. I just didn't know what it was called.
A lot of business best practices, a lot of this knowledge, I feel is pretty intuitive. It's just a matter of exposure and experience to some of these things. But when you kind of go through them, you kind of think, you know what? This was not actually as complicated as I thought, right? So, and I think every business owner kind of does this intrinsically or, figures it out at some point. So let's move to opportunities. So here's a fun category. What are the opportunities that, affect your business right now? So maybe you don't do any press or media, or you don't come out in any newspaper. Maybe, let's just say, for example, there's not as many competitors in your area, or maybe that market is underserved. This is where you start thinking about what are things that are out there that I know about my market and what I know about my business that I think are opportunities. And I'll use a quick example of Calltastic. We help startups and small businesses. I think we haven't really gone into a lot of the entrepreneurial communities in Los Angeles as much as I'd like to. So if I was doing my SWOT analysis, opportunity would be to raise the level of awareness in the entrepreneurial community, whether it's, nonprofits or whether it's meetups or network groups and all of the resources out there. So that's kind of what I see. Again, this opportunity are things
opportunities that could be
potential for your business. Right?
Yeah, it's almost missed opportunities.
Yes.
It's opportunities that you're not currently taking advantage of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anything come to mind?
Oh, I mean, tons. I mean,
yeah.
It's we're bound by time. I mean,
right.
There's a million ideas and a million things that you can do to make more money, but when you're running full tilt, it is what it is.
That goes back to the resources thing. But again, and the purpose of this exercise is this is not going to fix everything, but this is meant to give you a clear picture of where you stand and take some time, and then put these somewhere in your brainstorm or wherever on your fridge. Ideas for the future, long term. I had an old CEO that used to present a slide, and I don't know who made this quote, but the quote is something to the effect that a business is more likely to die because of indigestion than lack of opportunity. And that was really meant towards talking about kind of these infinite opportunities, but limited resources. And that if a business takes on too much, it can definitely kill itself, right? Very quickly.
We literally have the discussion probably once a week of,
Yep.
do we want to, I mean, we literally had the conversation, me and my business partner, an hour ago of a potential pivot. You know, do we want to add this other thing in to the thing that we have right now that's working? That, you know, I mean, we have a year's worth of work with this thing,
Yeah.
but if we do this other thing,
Yeah.
it would be a better offering. But, you know, how do you do it when you have a year's worth of work scheduled? You know, or not a year, but the rest of the years of the work scheduled. I mean, and the decision is, can you get the right people in place to do that? And, you know, a lot of times some people can, depending on the industry, some you can't. So yeah, I mean, I get it completely.
Very good. So last and not least, threats. Now, these are the things. Now we're really talking about the things that we are looking at in our community, in the political spectrum, in the economy. I mean, you know, you name it, everything in our environment that threatens our business. This could be more competitors showing up in your area, right? Or we talk about saturation, right? If your business is subject to regulatory changes or any political changes, even laws, of course, can be a threat to your business. There is a petition right now that is being worked on trying to convince, I think, the FCC to limit the ability of companies forcing you to call to cancel your product. Imagine what kind of an impact that would have as a threat to your business if customers didn't have to call you when they cancel. They could just flip a switch, right? And, you know, thinking of cable companies or other types of companies out there. Negative press, media coverage, bad reviews, right? That's a threat. Changing customer attitudes towards your company. I mean, you know, definitely, I think those things can really kill business. So what you want to do is find out what in the environment here do I see potential, creates a potential threat. So call-tastic, very quickly, AI, the most obvious one. If we provide outsourced services as part of some of the services we provide, the whole outsource industry is now at risk to a great extent because we have AI that's looking to automate a lot of the transactional things that are done by humans. So that's definitely a threat.
Oh yeah, remember the conversation we had a few months ago?
Absolutely. So anything that you think right now, I mean, besides the obvious, or maybe you do want to mention the obvious, is what do you see threatening your business today?
Maybe I don't know.
AI. I mean, let's talk about AI.
because we're honestly on the forefront of that. Honestly, well, because we have so much put into the AI project, if there was a very large lack of acceptance, a public lack of acceptance of it, that would hurt pretty bad.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, but if that did, that would hurt. We'd have to fall back quite a bit.
So it's going to be interesting to see how accepted it becomes. And then, you know, we talked about regulatory environment. You and I saw an article on LinkedIn where, and there have been discussions around privacy and the use of AI and kind of like, you know, so if you're thinking, I'm going to put an AI bot and to provide customer support for my business, you know, whatever that may be, but then there's some kind of regulatory law or regulations that come out saying, you know, you have to identify as an AI and you can't do X, Y, Z. I mean, so again, I think there's no shortage of threats to your business, but focus on big things that you think can really change what you do. Obviously, if you were a VCR and, you know, DVD repair shop, maybe a few years, you know, ago, right? Like, there's definitely would have been some threats there. And how do you overcome them as a business? So again, the SWOT analysis is meant to get you thinking or writing down every aspect of your business.
Yep.
And that's pretty much
I got a perfect example of a threat mitigation.
There you go.
Many years ago, when I was way younger, we're talking the late 90s, early 2000s, car audio was in its heyday.
Yep.
I mean, it was huge. And one of the shops kind of about 2 hours from me that was pretty nationally famous during, the heyday of it, he closed down. He closed the business and made a full pivot to home automation. And this was like in 2000, 2001, home theater, home automation.
Wow.
And when we went down there, he still has a shop, and we were buddies back then. So when I thought it was absolutely bonkers to close down a thriving business.
Right.
He's like, it's short lived.
Right.
And he probably could still exist today, but now he's putting all of the home automation and home theater in every multi-million-dollar house, basically within driving range of him. He went from a successful car audio company to a massively successful home automation company, but he saw the writing on the wall. He knew it was coming. He mitigated the risk and pivoted into something that, he could take his experience and still and made it into a very successful business.
That's a perfect example of a business owner kind of reading the writing on the wall, so to speak, and anticipating a major shift. Growing up in the 90s and being the car buff that I am, I absolutely loved car customization. I had custom stereos, my amp, my 2 12-inch speakers in the back, like the whole thing. And it was a thriving industry for a while. And it's a perfect example of, you started to see things happen. You started to see dealers start to do some of these customizations themselves, right? And so nowadays you can pick up a car and you've got packages, options, or accessories. So kind of, there's still obviously car culture out there and people who will go to these, but it's definitely not as prevalent as before. I mean, you can get cars with sports suspensions now, like out of the factory, they're coming that way now, right? So, whereas you had to get lowering springs and someone to install that kind of stuff for you, or even rims. So, that one was definitely very sad to see, because I did have friends, with car audio or with car custom shops. And it's, it was part of my childhood, but it eventually.
Mine too. We grew up with lowriders.
Just operated. Yeah. So
my first vehicle was a lowrider.
That's awesome. Growing up in Alhambra, it was the JDM stuff. It was the Japanese cars. So my Honda Civic 92 SI was my pride and joy. It had the little round butt and it was red. It looked like a tomato, but I had that slammed, bored out, exhaust, you name it. So, but anyway, I digress. I think for our next episode, we're going to continue to explore these topics and kind of those major areas, those 3 major areas that create challenges, struggles, or that basically kill businesses, startups, and small businesses. Any final words before we wrap up this episode? Anything you want to share?
Yeah. So just a reminder, if you have a question for us, go to the website, theactionitempodcast.com. There's a section there where you can ask questions. I know there was questions in there from the last week, but I haven't had time to put that together yet. We'll touch on those in the next episode. Our action item for this podcast is to fill this out. Is that correct?
SWOT.
Okay.
Look it up, SWOT. You can Google it.
I'll take what you have here. Yeah. I'll whip it up
or we can whip up a quick document that we'll post on our website to show you how to do it. It's very easy. Use ours, or take a piece of paper and divide it into 4 pieces and put your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. At the very least, it's a self-awareness about you and your business that would absolutely be beneficial to anybody.
I totally agree. Knowing, I mean, even though I don't use this, it's very, very similar from a concept standpoint to the focus, the brand story. A lot of you're asking yourself a lot of the similar questions. So cool. I think that'll help people out quite a bit if they could just know where they are, who their people are, who their customers are, and what their risks are. So I think it's a great topic. So the action
Definitely.
item is to fill out the SWOT. What do we call it? A form?
Analysis, SWOT analysis.
SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
And there will be a resource on the website where you can download a copy of it.
Fantastic. Great. Well, listen, thanks everybody again for tuning in. I am mind blown at the amount of views and listeners that we have on the podcast. And Trevor and I will continue to bring you content every week. So look forward to releasing this episode, and our next will continue on why businesses struggle.
Good deal. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
See you next week.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.